Well, who's got the answers to our racial problems? We think we do. And that's what we'll cover on today's edition of the WayneCarlen Show. And we got that coming at you right now. So without any further ado, let's make that happen.
Welcome everyone. Welcome on the 15th of July, the year of our Lord 2020. It is time again for the WayneCarlen Show. I'm Wayne, coming all the way to you from the West Coast of California.
And I'm Carlen, coming to you from the Gulf Coast down here in Texas. And this is the WayneCarlen Show.
Right on, man. Right on. Today, our show is very special because we want to take time to clearly outline what we believe here and what our strategy is here at Erase Race. You know, of course, we spend time each week talking about issues that race has caused in our society presently and even over for the last 400 years. But it's quite possible that you've never even visited our website and our Facebook page to find out how we plan to go about bringing change to all these challenges in our society. So today we're going to actually take time and walk through that so you can finally see what we mean here at Erase Race.
Yeah, that's right. Last week I spoke about, I talked about a blog post that we put out there called It's Complicated. And I talked about how complicated this whole issue is. And when you really understand the evolution of race and how we got to some of our legal issues in this country concerning race and civil rights and how all that played out, it really does get kind of complicated. So we're going to take some time today to take it nice and slowly and break some of that down. And as always, before we get started, though, we want to cover some of the issues that are happening in our country this week. And specifically, let's talk about some coronavirus stuff. Wayne, what we got?
Oh, my goodness, my goodness, my goodness. You know, here in California, in the Bay Area, we had reopened about a month ago. And everybody knows who follows us. I have a small business in martial arts school, considered a small business here in Vallejo, California. And we had reopened for a month, did some redecorating, new floors, new plumbing in my bathrooms, took a week to get all that done. And then the governor tells me yesterday, along with, thousands of other small businesses and large businesses, that we have to shut down again. So we're right back now to where we were about a month ago, doing Zoom classes. We're going to try something a little different today as well, holding outdoor classes. So the order was no indoor activities. So there's no restrictions on outdoor activities. So we're going to try to do that as well as do our Zoom classes at the same time. But I also know that there are many people who don't have that option. My barber, and I haven't seen him in quite a while, but my barber, he also owns a bar. So and he owns a barber school. So all three of his businesses are shut down, and that's his only source of income for his family. So there's a lot of people hurting. But we're going through some. I know you want to talk about some of the numbers because some of the numbers bear out, especially here in California, Texas, and in Florida, where our dear friend lives. It's not looking as good as it should right now.
Yeah, and I think there's so much confusion, and that's why I keep bringing up the issue of leadership, because when you got a crisis, and I've learned this from being in the Marine Corps, when there are things happening and there's a lot of unknowns happening, your responsibility as a leader is to stabilize, at least, if nothing else, your people, so that your uncertainty, and sometimes when you're the leader, you don't have all the answers. But what you can do is you can provide stability for those that you're leading, those that are following. You can provide stability. And I think that's what we haven't had really in this country, because with ever changing, things are continually changing. I've noticed how in the statistics, in the way that they relate to statistics, the way they've changed the way they report those things, and nobody knows if they're doing that because they want to make them look better, they want to make them look worse, whatever. So there's manipulation of statistics. Like when I looked at Texas, Florida, and California, and they talked about the spike in cases, and they have spiked. But now they have a new way of keeping track of the numbers. And so they have the 7-day rolling average, where before they were doing daily. So now, did they do that so that the numbers would stay high? Because now, even when they go down, if your last 4 days have had 8,000, then you're going to be more like an 8,000 average rather than at maybe 5,500, which might be where you are. So that's kind of the case. They showed California as having 12,000 new cases based on a 7-day average. Texas at 9,900 with a 7-day average, and Florida at 9,200 with a 7-day average. So nobody can really make sense of that, because you have to compare it to a like period of time. And since they just kind of started doing it that way, you really have no reference for it. So we just kind of have to do what we think is the best thing. And I think everybody understands that this virus is not as deadly as we thought, but it is very contagious. And so people need to take proper precautions, act like you have it, and then we need to go from there. Businesses are being affected, and everybody will have their view on whether or not school should be going. I personally think school should be, and I would send people back to school. I said, because I really feel for the family's viewpoint. Families are more flexible, and parents are at home. They can figure out what they need to do. They can find out ways, because a lot of people, like you were saying, your friend, they're going to have to find new ways of income. And if you got to do that, and you got to be concerned about your child who's at home, that makes it extra tough. And so I think we can adapt and adjust if we can get the kids back in school. And yeah, we want to be cautious about that, because we don't want to send them back to school and send them to an environment that's infected and they bring it home and contact relatives and keep this thing expanding. But I think that will give the kids, and I've heard health experts talk about how this would be very good for kids, to give them some sense of normalcy, because kids, that's their environment, education, school, they're meeting with their friends, their peers, and it's good for their psychological health. And so all those things need to be factored in too. We know before we've had suicide issue problems with teenagers, and we really don't want to compound some of those issues, because we're concerned about the 0.04% mortality rate of COVID-19. Our suicide rate could be higher than that if we're not careful. So that gets kind of complicated, but I think if you got a heart for people, which I do, I just love dealing with people, leading people, whatever, and you're concerned and you're listening to the people, then you can do what's in their best interest. And so I think their best interest is, let's try to get these families back on track by giving them some sense of normalcy, even during this tough time.
Yeah.
Okay, so all right, so let's get to the meat of our discussion today, and let's talk about erase race. I've got lots of friends and I've got lots of enemies. I don't have lots of enemies. I don't think I do. At least I don't know them all. But I have people
who don't agree with you.
There you go. That's what I was getting ready to say. I have people who don't agree with me, and they don't agree with me on this concept of erase race. And I always tell them, if you listen, then you'll agree. All right. So this is what I'm saying to you all out there today. If you listen, then you'll agree. And probably most of the people that are listening probably say, hey, well, I'm down with erase race. I'm already agreeing, because the concept is really very simple. And it's basically saying that the genesis of all of our problems concerning race begin with the concept of race itself. All right. So I want to make that very clear. Now, most people don't understand that. And so they say, wait, our problem is racism. And so there's a clear distinction to be made between the issue of race and racism. I contend that racism is the thing that was created by race. Now, if we didn't have the concept of race, this thing called racism would simply be called hate. And so I think hate will always exist without regard to any other concept that you've got. I'll find a reason to hate you. And if you notice, even inside people of the same quote unquote skin colors, then there's hate. And matter of fact, if you look at the statistics, most of the murders that happen, then people of the same skin color murder people of the same skin color, regardless of what that skin color is. All right. So that's hate. The concept, though, that was created of race did something totally different, though. It was saying that we're going to create these classifications whereby you can find new groups to hate because they're not like you. And we're going to say that the one group at the top is a better group. The people who created it would put themselves at the top. We're in this group. And then other people are in the other groups as you go down. And you've got this so that everybody kind of understands that, but we don't act as though we understand it. What we've done is we've accepted this concept that was created and we've begun to use it and we tried to make it legitimate. And you cannot make this a legitimate concept of race, which created a hierarchy, which said that white people were on top, black people are on bottom, and other colors are somewhere in between there.
Mm.
You cannot make that logical, and you cannot make that work. And that's what makes Erase Race so different than all the other programs out there. A friend of mine, George Middleton, who shares this view with me, I said, we're the only two guys going around saying the problem is race, because most people think it's simply racism. And they don't understand that when you use the term race and the principles thereof, you've bought into the hierarchy, and you're operating inside a racial paradigm which says there are people on top, there are people on the bottom. Oh, but by the way, you should treat us equal. You can't get equality when you got people on top and people on the bottom. The only way for equality is to get equality. And so you have to do away with the things that are creating inequality. Now, people would say that, well, the inequality comes from unfair hiring practice, unfair law enforcement practices. And we contend here that those practices come about because those people who would enforce those practices believe in the concept of race. Now, they wouldn't admit and say, oh yeah, I believe in race. It's a given. In this country, you get that automatically. You're taught that as a child. You don't get it at 2 years old because you don't understand yet. And that's why all the kids play together. I got my 2-year-old grandson. He'll play with everybody. We go out to Walmart. He's saying hi to everybody he sees. Yes. That's beautiful. Mm-hmm. By the time he gets 4 or 5, there's a change in our culture, though, because they begin to understand that, but mom and dad only go to deal with these type of people on Sunday. Mom and dad only do this. These are the type of people who come over the house. And we do that, and we don't understand that we're socializing our children to continue to believe in this. I used to make a joke and say, race and Santa Claus, both are untrue, but we continue to teach our kids that as they grow up, So our kids believe in race and they believe in Santa Claus, and it's the same thing. Neither one of those things are true. And so at Erase Race, that's what we mean when we say we want to erase race. We really mean getting rid of that concept. There was if you were online this past week or watched CNN, you saw Don Lemon getting into it with Terry Crews about the issue of Black Lives Matter. And it's the same concept that we're talking about here, where Terry Crews seems to think in a race concept that black meant black lives, and so he was saying, why did Black Lives Matter care about all these black lives? And Don Lemon was defending Black Lives Matter by saying they only care about these particular type of black lives because they're concerned only with the issue of police brutality. And so that's why there's a conflict. And you'll find a lot of people saying we support the slogan Black Lives Matter, but we don't support the concept, or we don't support the principles of the organization of Black Lives Matter. So Erase Race is saying our name means what we stand for. So we stand for exactly what we say in our name, that race does not belong in our society, and we want to eradicate it, erase it, get rid of it. So that's exactly what it means. As a matter of fact, Erase stands for Erase Race and Strengthen Ethics, which we believe that character is what really matters. And so that's what our name means. And that's the way we roll. So we're not a conflicted organization. And matter of fact, we've got lots more. So besides some of this stuff that I'm telling you today, which we'll follow up, we're creating videos because George Milton and I want to do this thing called The Origin of Races, so that people can more clearly understand really how we got to this thing called race, because there's a lot of miscommunication about why we have this concept. And so people think that it's inane and there's nothing wrong with it. Race is terrible. We got to get rid of it. And so that's what our objective is here at Erase Race. All right. So bottom line, if that name trips you up, know that the bottom line is that Erase Race is simply, as we subtitle it, the American Unity Movement, because we believe that if we're going to do anything, that we've got to unify first. Notice that all of our problems that we've tried to solve before, I think Dr. King was the last one who said that we've got to come together as brothers or we'll perish together as fools. That was the unity message. The other messages are, well, Black people need to do this first. We need to do this, or white people need to change. Everything else is expecting and placing demands on other groups rather than on us working together. So if you're not really with us working together, and if you believe that, no, we should be segregated. And I even heard somebody say, well, perhaps segregation is the way. Maybe Black people need to have their own area and white people. That's the same thing Richard Spencer, who's for the alt-right, which is better known as today's Ku Klux Klan, that's what he believes. Because he believes that, and he says He doesn't dislike black people. He just believes black people should be doing their own thing and let white people do their own thing.
Right.
Now,
Yes.
that sounds great for people who think like that. And maybe even some black people would say yes, because I have some friends who are saying black people need to do their own. They need to buy black. They need to educate black. They need to stay black. And we could do this all by ourselves. Well, that's fine. Except I've got a grandson and his dad would be called white and his mom is my daughter who would be called black. Where does he go?
Mm.
Where does he go? So that's not a solution because number one, and if we did the history and we'll chronicle that later, we'll find out that the original ancestors were all from Africa. So DNA wise, we're really all mixed up. And so we all belong in one family. And so for us to start talking about, yeah, but skin color, let's separate out the skin colors and let's do this thing based on segregated by skin color. That's ridiculous. And that is not a unity message. And I don't think it's one that allows us to coexist in this country in which we've all been placed, regardless of how we got here. Some by indentured servanthood, some by exploring, some on slave ships. We're all here now, and we've got a country that we're trying to learn to live together in. So we need to do that. And I think the answer is, I got a lot of stuff I'm covering here, but we want to talk about how we're doing it in the American Unity Movement. We think the foundation is relationships.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we've done a lot of things. We've had legislation, we've had protests, we've had boycotts, we've had seminars, I've been a part of some of those things myself, where I remember in Albany, Georgia in the early 90s, there was a big forgiveness thing. The Southern Baptist Convention in 95 said we were a part of slavery and we asked for forgiveness. They did this big repentance ceremony. Well, that's great. But I don't think it really meant anything because most people don't know that happened. But what does that mean now? And so I think we've done all these things. Here's the one thing I think we haven't tried, and that is you and me going across the street, meeting people that are different than we are, building real relationships. And some of the initiatives we're going to create in Erase Race are designed just to do that, get people to build real relationships. My life is so full, and I'm not going to say I'm the most integrated guy on the planet. I hope I'm not. I hope there are people who have lifestyles more integrated, but mine is great. I mean, I tell you, I got people of every color, you talk about United Nations. That's my background. So if you want to challenge me, go look at my Facebook friends and look through the profile. And I don't even know. And it's not like I intentionally said, I need more white friends or I need more black friends. It's just the way that I live. I live with people. I just like people who are into people who want to develop relationships. And so that's why I guess it's not strange that my daughter would live a life that way. I never talked to my daughter about being black. I never told her you got to work twice as hard. I never brought up anything like that. She always felt like she just had to go conquer the world with whatever and face any obstacles. And so that's why she would be open to marrying someone who had different skin color. And my other daughter is the same way, and she's into Asian stuff, whatever. I couldn't have selected out and said, hey, you should support Asian this, get into this Asian thing. No, you open up the world for your children and you allow them to choose with the gifts that God gives them and let them just go explore. And so that's what we're doing. We're building relationships where we can get that because my life is so full because of the different groups of people that I'm in unity with and the families that that are part of my family. And that's a great world. I want to expose others to that world. So that's what we're doing in Erase Race, because we believe if we can start this dialogue and get this talk going like never before, we can do this talk thing. We can get people to begin walking together. And that's what I mean about unity. We haven't talked to each other in real relationships. So we therefore don't walk together. And that's what we need to do.
Wow, man, you said a lot there, and that was a lot for people to digest, but it was good. It was all good stuff. I'm gonna ask you another question though, because give us an example, like you said, like never before. Give us an example of what it means to talk like never before.
Yeah, superficially, we've done a great job in America of integrating and saying we've got these diverse schools, communities, congregations, and in some ways we do, in a lot of ways we don't. But even in those institutions where we have people in the same room, in the same building, in the same church, in the same community, they don't know each other. They don't talk to each other. I did a blog post called the Carlen Charleston Connection, where I met this family, the Carlens, in Japan when I was there in the Marine Corps, and the Carlens were there, and we were just two different families, totally different families by America's way Americans would see us. One family they would call black, one family they would call white. we never talked really specifically about black and white, although we do deal with all the race issues, and we can do that in a different way because their family is a part of our family. We feel as tight with them as we do with Wayne Jones. Wayne Jones, the Jones family is another one. I mean, they were like brothers and their kids are like my kids, whatever. And we have that relationship. And so I have that across the spectrum with people of different, what we call skin colors, whatever. And so that's what opens up your world to have relationships that understand. So when something happens, George Floyd happens, I don't need to go and say, I wonder what white people think about this. No, I'm in dialogue with people that I know who are what they call white people, the Carlens, and we just talk as normal. And so if they say something I disagree with, they're not disagreeing with me because I'm black. We argue about all kinds of stuff. He's a Florida Gator. I'm from Texas. And so I was always supporting the Longhorns. We fight about that more than anything else. So we disagree on things and a lot of things we agree upon, but we're in relationship with them. And that's the important thing. And so our dialogue is not one where I want to now bring in someone from an African-American community so I can hear what their view is. I need to understand what their view is. You should have been in a relationship and you would understand. You understand when you're in a relationship with your husband or your wife, you understand. And so our responsibility is to be in relationship with people that are not like us. That way, when crisis happens, as it's prone to do in our country, in life, then we already have that understanding. We have an understanding. That way, when people disagree, it's not mean and nasty like you see on Facebook. It's not mean and nasty like you see on CNN, Fox News, MSNBC. The fighting is just nasty from the White House on down. Everybody's in this state of hate them because they disagree, because we have not learned to dialogue with each other in a reasonable manner. And so that's what our rules for dialogue are for. We hold forums and we go out there and we really talk about how to talk to people in a way that brings something constructive out of the dialogue rather than something destructive and more hate. So that's what we're doing. That's our relationship building, because we need to do that before we get to the thing that really makes the Race nonprofit work. And that is that we come together, we dialogue, we build the relationships so that we can achieve the work of this country. Most people say, vote for this president or that president, vote for this senator or that senator, vote for this congressman or that congressman. And I say, you can do whatever you want when it comes to voting. We, the American people, got to do the work. And we can do that by building communities of concern and compassion where we work together. And the politicians will just be people who then represent us, which is all they should be doing. They should be representing the American people as we go about making the change that needs to happen in this country. So that's what we need to be about. At an Erase Race, that's what we're furthering. We're furthering the opportunity to both talk, to work, and come about so that we can do this work together, bring that together so we can all decide that my input is important, your input is important, and together we can create something special.
Man, that sounds like a really ambitious effort. And I know that's why we get a lot of people who say, hey, you guys are crazy. Why are you even trying that? It's never going to work. Race is going to be here forever. We hear all of that stuff. So what's your timeline? How long do you think it's going to take to make all of this stuff happen?
Till I die. I don't know. No, we don't know the timeline, but hey, we're committed to the work. And, it's like Dr. King said, I might not get there with you, but he knew that our country would get there. And so maybe the dream that he had, he wasn't able to achieve in his lifetime, but we can only do, as he said, it's always right to do what's right. I mean, the time is right to do what's right. And so we got to put forth the effort. And that effort begins with us saying, let's get rid of all these things that are separating and dividing us. And let's come together. And, one of my friends who always says, yeah, but doing away with the race concept doesn't do anything. And, the reality is that's right. But you know what it does do? It stops us from being divided. And it gives us an opportunity to come together. We could find another reason to hate, because hate's always out there. We could find another reason to not get along or not do the work necessary. But that is one obstacle. And we take that away, then we're one step closer to doing the work that needs to happen. And so that's what we're going to do at Erase Race. And initially, when I started this, I had this artificial timeline because, like most Marines, we feel like we can solve anything. As long as you give us a rifle in 6 months, we can solve it. But I realize now that timeline that I had for 3 years, I didn't plan on a pandemic virus happening. I didn't plan on anything like that. So we're adapting and we'll adjust, just like Marines do when we go into combat. We have to adapt and we adjust. And that's what we're doing now. And so whatever it takes. Now, I'm not creating a nonprofit organization that should happen in perpetuity. I don't think this should go on forever. I'm not creating like an NAACP that'll be there forever. I'm creating Erase Race, the nonprofit that is designed to do away with this concept of race so that we can build relationships, learn a dialogue, and then have a society that has learned how to work together for the good and benefits of its citizens. And so that's what we're going to do. And so whatever time it takes to do that, and you can be a part of that. And so we're getting ready to start our fundraising campaign and we're looking for monthly contributors. So we're going to ask you to go to our website, eraseraces.com, and decide what you can give. Now, some people might want to only give one time. That's fine. We'll accept that because everything will be appreciated. However, what we're looking for is monthly contributors. And even if that's $1 a month, I'm telling my daughter, she better give at least $1 a month. I'm telling all of my friends, if you're not giving $1 a month, I'm going to be upset with you. I'm not going to unfriend you though, like people are doing out there. You can still be down with the cause, because more than that, we want you down with the ideology. But we think once you understand the ideology, you'll be willing to say, I'll give any amount necessary to make sure that we can further the Erase Race cause, because you understand that it's very beneficial for us to be able to work together to bring about this unity in the country. So that's our Erase Race pitch, Erase Race approach. If you got any questions, go to eraserace.com, go to our Facebook page, Instagram, and hit us up. YouTube, check out some of our videos. We're going to have a lot more education out there in the future, because I really do want people to understand, because I think once people get this understanding, then it'll be easy for them to stand with us on this issue of Erase Race.
Man, when you were talking, I had a scripture that was coming to my mind. A lot of people might be familiar with it because it's well known. And it talks about not being conformed to the way the world thinks. Most times we just accept something as that's the way it is. That's the way it's going to be. It's going to be that way forever. But the scripture says, don't be conformed to the way the world thinks, but transform your thinking by the renewing of your mind. And so this is a time that we see, like you said before, we've tried things over and different things over and over and over. We keep getting the same results. And many say that's the definition of insanity. Perhaps it is time for us to renew our minds, transform our way of thinking, and then we possibly will get, the results that we are all hoping for. And like you said, that's unity. It's time for us to come together. So that's been a great show. Remember, like Carlen said, we would love to have your financial support, but we also want you to just begin to thinking differently, change your idea. We need your ideological support as well. And so if we can get you to understand what we're doing, we're sure you'll be willing to support us financially too. So thanks for being with us today on the Wayne and Carlen Show. I'm Wayne, again, coming from the Bay Area, California.
I'm Carlen. And
this has been the WayneCarlen Show.
Yo.
We'll see you again next week on the Wayne